Day 1 of the experiment started off relatively slow for the citizens and refugees of Arin. Upon entering the realm for the first time, they had time to talk, share stories about their past, and ultimately get to know each other. However, the peace wasn't always going to last. The corruption which they thought they had outran had caught up to them. They were hopeless to the power, and so they had to flee the last place that they could truly call their home. And so they ventured into the unknown. So they finish the first event and they travel off to find a new place to call home. They find their new home in a land called Arcaton, a place filled with history that's ready to be uncovered. Before going out and deciding to explore the world, a lot of players got into groups and they started to form the first civilizations that we saw on the server. However, of course, there were a few people who wanted to get out there and start exploring on their own. And Franit here was one of the first people to build a trade station. And it looks like he forgot which experiment he's participating in. Also, something to note about the Kingdom's experiment is that we're actually a roleplay focused server. So when you see people sitting around or not doing much, they're actually talking, they're actually roleplaying, they're creating experiences among each other. Here we can actually see Duozu, one of our players, roleplaying with a small group of people. Outside of players interacting with each other through roleplay, we also use it to convey the lore of the land. Two players, Kaz27 and Boreal, were some of the first to discover a trigger for an interaction with a denizen of the island. As Kaz reached the peak of a mountain, it was there where he found a compass buried beneath the snow. Upon picking up this item, he heard what he thought was a voice, and saw an apparition appear from the corner of his eye. Now these two are not the only people on the island to have some sort of weird experience. Now before we continue with the lore happenings of day 1, I want to interrupt for one moment to quickly go over some of the key nations that formed up to this point. Starting in the east, we have Rockport, a decent-sized monarchy led by most of Assalad. Just north of Rockport was the Foundling Sanctuary, a small safe haven for travelers led by a player named Aragon. Moving west of Rockport, we have Commercium and the Riverlands, the Riverlands being led by Jophiel and Commercium by Piston Poic. Further to the west, we come across Crescentia, ran by a group of councilors elected by the citizens. Just below Crescentia is the Cliffwell Abbey, home to a group of humble monks led by head priest Bonroko. And on the western coast lays the Mesa encampment, created by a group of people who formed another council-type system. And then the final settlement that we touch on is a small group called the Guild up north, led by Teromaru. When asked what the acronym Guild stands for, I was told it stands for absolutely nothing. As I mentioned earlier, it wasn't only Boreal and Caddis that came across some form of spirit on the island. The Riverlands had their own close encounter. Soon after claiming an already existing village as their own, rumors had begun circulating around that their leader Jophiel saw something out in a nearby field. To confirm these suspicions, the townspeople built a shrine in an attempt to communicate with the spirits. The totem cracked. It began to turn black as the skies darkened. It would seem that the villagers had achieved their goal. Moments after turning their attention to the totem, it was struck with a flash of lightning, and before them stood a figure. The figure struck fear into the hearts of all present. Except Fritz, he didn't really seem to mind. It spoke slowly and almost with a timid tone. "This is not your home," it said. Come here with greed, in your minds you will surely lose. Jophiel, worried about her group's safety, hastily suggested that the group leave the town and find somewhere else to reside. Fritz, on the other hand, wanted to stay behind, sure that the spirit's warning wasn't implying anything too sinister and was merely acting as a warning. Jophiel made the decision to lead the group off into the wilds in search of a better home, while Fritz stayed behind. At this point, this marks most of the interesting events happening from day one. Players opted to work on their kingdoms, establish friendships, and overall, it was relatively peaceful. I was actually pleasantly surprised by how little PvP we ended up having by the end of this. By really pushing the roleplay, a lot of players opted to interact with each other and the lore we laid out for them, rather than getting at everyone's throat. However, a little bit of bloodshed was inevitable.
It's wrong. And I can't go on like this. Ever since the corruption came, it's been destroying everything. I feel so empty without the people that I used to know. I think it's time.
On day 2, while Fritz frolicked on the roofs of Rivershire's village, Jophiel led her group upstream and into the mountains, where they happened across a small group which called themselves the Luminous Oligarchy. Here, the two groups converse, and Jophiel quickly learns that the group settled at a tree which they claimed was mystical and protected by a spirit that they came to know as Lumine. Jophiel's group, being a little phasmophobic, decided it would be best if they continue their journey. They eventually happen across Crescentia. The Crescentians welcomed Jophiel's travel party with open arms and invited them to discuss remaining peaceful with each other. Without any hesitation, the groups came to an agreement to remain neutral and provide assistance where possible. It was also during this conversation that Jophiel learned a few very important facts. For one, the Luminous Oligarchy, which they had previously met before, were part of Crescentia as a sort of city-state. And the spirit they worshipped, Lumine, was in fact peaceful. When asked how they knew this, the Crescentians explained that their oracle, Saps, had spoken with the spirit. It was at this moment Jophiel realized that perhaps Fritz was right. Maybe the spirit's warnings were harmless. With this new information, Jophiel returned home with her followers. Since finding the compass, Caddis and Boreal continued to explore the lands under the banner of Sanctus, a secretive group that resided somewhere on the north side of the continent. During their travels, they noticed that the compass never pointed north. They decided to follow it and see what was seemingly guiding them. This led them to the top of a volcano, located just west of Rockport. After some quick excavation work, they came across a chest filled with weird plant-like specimens and research notes. Intrigued, they took the artifacts and headed back towards Sanctus. During the first few days, as kingdoms went exploring, establishing their territories and forming alliances, there was one person who decided that, on their own, they would host a public forum which all nations would be invited to. This person was Professor Utonium. He began construction on what he'd call the World's Fair, just south of Commercium, who would officially sponsor the event. While the preparations for the fair are being made, let's take a quick few moments to recap some key points of information. At this point, our players have met or heard of 3 spirits: Lumine, Vidaldus, and Zendre. Each spirit seems to reside in a quadrant of the island: Lumine to the west, Vidaldus to the north, and Zendre to the east. However, there was talks of a 4th spirit up north, originating from the guild. Toromaru heard a voice whisper to him.
The river.
It said.
Go alone.
Toromaru, without hesitation, followed the voice to the river until he was alone. Upon reaching the river, Toromaru felt a presence. It drew him towards the sandy banks. There in the water, Toromaru saw the reflection of a woman. Toromaru claims it was during this conversation that he was given his magic wooden hoe, and that the spirit explained Toromaru would serve a higher purpose. Her purpose. The fair is beginning soon. But before we hop into that, let's take a moment to see what Rivershare is up to. Deep in the eastern jungles, one of Rivershare's scouting parties came across a crypt, following the journals of Zendre, which they found in their annexed town. The crypt contained the body of Vidaldus, as well as more of Zendre's journals. While most of the party returned to Rivershare, they had an artifact hunting group consisting of Hikaru, Cyan, and Hermes, which set out to continue following Zendre's journals, because they believed that it would lead them to somewhere of great importance. The fair has finally arrived and the attendance turned out phenomenal. Almost every single nation arrived with representatives to speak at the forum and discuss political issues. The attendees were as follows. High Counselor Luxera from Crescentia, King Sisistan from Pandora, Head of Diplomatic Relations Thomas from Sanctus, King Most of a Salad from Rockport, Representative Jubilee from the Luminous Oligarchy, Shrine Maiden Neblitz from Tojinja, His Holiness Father Bond from the Cliffwale Abbey, Diplomat Prince Captain from the Mesa Encampment, Representative Bellicast from Krapfenberg, Leader Weaverge from Alexandria, Leader Jofiel from Rivershire, King 8-Bit Owners from Daedra, Iwan from Fezamore, Consul Toromaru, or emissary, from the Guild, Representative Jacob from Commercium. Everyone was thoroughly enjoying their time at the fair. Trading, chatting, playing games, it was a nice change of pace from the constant running from the corruption that they had previously been doing to finding sanctuary here. However, it wouldn't be long before that peace came to an abrupt end. As the festivities died down, people began to funnel into the main stage, where they would hear their world leaders chat, debate, and give speeches about the future of their new island.
One another, I, Mustafa Selik, representing the Guild as its consul and wielder of a divinely bestowed artifact.
Each person gathered here is another hand helping to build a cooperative and prosperous international community.
The Sanctus Republic is proud to announce that we have made strides in many areas of engineering.
And we are officially welcoming all those who feel afraid into the open arms of Rockport.
And there are many who would be afraid. In the middle of one of the representative speeches, three strangers took the stage.
No matter where we find ourselves, it always follows. I've come to announce that the corruption is here, on this island. Myself, Spider, and Caddis have already been infected by it.
The corruption has returned.